Hello, I'm Gerard Floriano, Artistic Director of Finger Lakes Opera, and welcome to my new video podcast series that I'm calling Behind the Curtain. In these 4 episodes, I'll be speaking with some of Flo's stage directors from past and present with the aim of giving you a peek into the creative process. You'll get a glimpse of their careers and how they go about the fascinating process of bringing an opera from the rehearsal room to the stage. We'll also be speaking with the director for this summer's production of The Barber of Seville, Stephanie Havey. For that final episode, you'll be able to ask questions in real time of Stephanie and me, and learn more of what we have planned for our 2021 production season. So now I hope you'll sit back and enjoy these engaging and informative conversations. Hello and welcome to the second of my video podcast series called Behind the Curtain. I'm Gerard Floriano, Artistic Director of Finger Lakes Opera, and I am so happy to welcome to this video podcast Gary John La Rosa. Gary John is a veteran of many different directing opportunities literally throughout the world. Has worked with Finger Lakes Opera on a number of occasions, actually on 3 different occasions. He is a Broadway director, off-Broadway, regional theater, opera, cabaret, you name it. Gary John has done it in the stage directing and choreography world. Gary John, it's great to see you. How are you doing? And what is new with you? How are you doing?
Hi, Jerry. How nice to see you. And thanks for having me. Things are good. Things are good. I mean, it's been a challenging year for everybody, but I'm happy that to report that I've been well and keeping very busy. I suppose my latest project was just completed a few days ago. I was working for 6 weeks with the University at Buffalo, and we were doing a production which was actually sort of an evening of Gilbert and Sullivan. So we spent 6 weeks putting together 4 different musical scenes from HMS Pinafore, from the Gondoliers, from Princess Ida, and Iolanthe. So it was really a lot of fun, and it was extremely challenging because it was done remotely, and I've never directed over the internet before, so that was something to really.
What was that like? I mean, share with our audience, because it, I think our audience has an idea when they come to a performance and see it all in front of them, and they can kind of visualize what's happened. But how is it different now? Because we're all experiencing that. How is it different, directing virtually, for the actors, for the performers?
Well, it's very different, and something that you really have to kind of get a handle on. I know for me, I'm a very physical director. I'm very visual, and I like to be on my feet, and I like to be, with my actors moving around. So this idea of sitting in a chair and trying to direct is, with this piece of technology between you is difficult. The way we worked it, really, rehearsals were done with a Zoom session, and we had a cast of 25. The way that we ran rehearsals is we would have a general Zoom session, and then we'd have breakout rooms. And not unlike a regular rehearsal where you may have more than one thing happening simultaneously, the students would basically arrive at the main room, and then we would have dialect work in one room. We'd have music brush-ups in another room. And then in my room, I would start staging the material. Gilbert and Sullivan is a little tricky because so much of the language is archaic. So we spent a great deal of time talking about the script, talking about, what made Gilbert and Sullivan so unique, and the form of comic opera, which was basically new. I mean, they created it. So we talked about how that was influenced by what came before it and how it changed what came after it. And then, of course, we worked on the specific acting moments within the scenes and song. So it was a challenging thing to do because from a staging standpoint, to try to choreograph something over a camera is not ideal. It's hard to demonstrate. I'm not working in a television studio where I have all the great lighting and all that. So we were kind of doing it in a pretty rudimentary way. But I will say that with 6 weeks of work, we really achieved a very, very nice evening that I think is quite satisfying. And for me, it was exciting because that was my first experience with Gilbert and Sullivan. So I was thrilled to work on it because, first of all, I love working on things that I haven't done before, but it was such a different genre. And while I've done operetta before, I just had not worked on their pieces before. So I really, really enjoyed the research part of it and learning about them and their work and their significance and their influence. And the music is just tremendous.
Absolutely. Yeah, the music is tremendous. It's a kind of a tightrope between a takeoff on what had come just before and, but also a kind of a doff of the cap, to the great masters that had preceded them, and then their own humorous twist on that musical style.
Right.
Just so clever.
Yeah, really wonderful. So that's the thing that I've been working on most recently. Over the course of the last months, I've been able to continue my coaching. I do private coaching in New York, and that also went to Zoom, which was a little bit easier when you're working one-on-one.
Right.
However, it's still not ideal, but I was able to maintain a roster of students.
So you're I want to say the beginnings of your career was as a performer.
Yes.
How did you? I'm curious. I always want to know how people got into the business, and so how did you get into stage directing per se, and along the lines more choreography and whatnot, starting out as a performer originally?
Yeah, well, I always studied to be a performer, and I grew up in the New York City area. So I was fortunate to see dozens and dozens and dozens of Broadway shows. I was really fortunate. It was affordable then, and I was lucky to have people that wanted to go take me. So, I literally saw a couple of hundred Broadway shows by the time I was in high school.
Wow.
So that was an incredible education, and all it did was feed my desire even more because I loved it so much. But I went to UCLA and I studied theater and dance, and then literally a month after I graduated, I was working full time in Las Vegas as a dancer. I was really kind of fortunate to be one of the few people that graduates with a degree in theater and dance and actually has a long-term job. The show that I did was a multi-million-dollar production show at the Flamingo, and this show was called City Lights. The song from Kander and Ebb's song from The Act. And truth be told, the show ran 15 years in the Flamingo showroom, and it was extremely successful. One of the reasons I was hired was because you had to sing, you had to dance, you had to ice skate, you had to do all these things that,
Of course, it's Las Vegas, right?
Right. So this is back in the day when there were showgirls, and it was next to Jubilee and across the street from the Dunes Hotel and the Folies Bergère and the Moulin Rouge and all those shows. So it was a great experience for me to have a long-term job and to get the experience of doing a show for 1,000 performances. Wow. So I spent a year there, and then I worked overseas for a year in South Africa, which was a really exciting journey. I got hired for a show in Las Vegas to go to South Africa. I spent 13 months there, came back, went back into the show in Vegas, and then eventually made my way back to New York because my heart was really always in musical theater. So the Vegas thing was a great way to learn discipline of performing, a night after 2 shows a night. Actually, I did 12 shows a week. There were 14 shows, but I did 12. And they gave us 1 night off, and that was great experience. So following that, I came back to New York. I got my equity card, and I ultimately worked on Broadway in a couple of shows. One was a huge flop. It lasted 2 weeks. One was Fiddler on the Roof, which was a revival, which was very successful.
We'll get
So
to that a little bit later. Yeah.
yeah, so I had the good fortune to do a lot of work as a performer. When I came back to New York, I was able to book cruise ships from New York. I did work on soap operas that were filming at the studios in Brooklyn. I did some really small parts in films, but the theater was ever present, and I worked a fair amount. But I was on a national tour well into my career when I started to become frustrated with the role of the performer. And partly that was because I always loved choreography. I always loved directing, and I did it sort of on the side, but never, in a major way. And but having had that taste of it and having experienced, honestly, working for some not very good directors in certain cases, made me want to utilize more of what I thought were my talents. So I loved lighting. I loved collaborating on costume design. I loved, design meetings. I really enjoyed the research that goes into a production. So all of that led me to believe that, this was something I should try. And it was a little scary because I was pretty successful as a performer and I worked most of the time, but I felt like I had more to offer. So I took the plunge and I got off the national tour. And while I was on the tail end of the tour, I actually lined up some work. And so I said, I'm going to give myself a year, see what happens. And when the year was up, I was working. And so I never looked back, and I've never been on a stage as a performer again since then. So I felt like it was the right decision, and I really love what I do.
The progression of what you had been doing.
Yeah.
That shows, and I've worked with you on several shows, and in your directing, it shows that you've been a performer, because the performers always respond so wonderfully to your direction. And while I didn't know the extent of your background as a performer, I could intuit it just from watching you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I really think it's helpful to have been a performer, because part of the journey of an opera singer or musical theater actor, it's absorbing the material, it's absorbing the drama that's unfolding, and being able to access that in a way that can be communicated. And when you've been a performer, sometimes people throw things at you and just expect you to get it. And other times people nurture you more. What I learned is that everybody has a different way of learning, and you have to be sort of responsive to, this person's really quick with this, and this person has a fear of movement, and this person just needs time to explore before some people you can give notes and notes and notes, but I feel like that's not always the best approach, because they need to kind of get their feet wet before you can give them a lot of direction. So I feel like as a performer, I was able to read people a little bit more and kind of tailor the direction to the way that they could absorb it most easily.
Absolutely, yeah. So just to bring our audience, in case they haven't been with us for the entire journey of Finger Lakes Opera, you've directed 3 shows with Finger Lakes Opera: A Grand Night for Singing, the Rodgers and Hammerstein review, I Love a Piano, also another musical review when we were back at Geneseo, and Die Fledermaus in Canandaigua. So that kind of shows your versatility, I think, right there. And I'm curious to know if you think differently, or how you work with opera singers versus musical theater singers. And, if there's any areas that cross over, and there are any areas, because I know when I work with opera singers versus musical theater, there are slightly different techniques that they employ and that I have to be aware of as a music director. So how do you go about, because you clearly work in, have a foot in both sides of the.
Yeah, and I have to say, like, I've always wanted to do more opera. So when you presented the opportunity to work on Fledermaus, it was really exciting, because one of the things, I'll start by saying that one of the things I've always felt as an opera goer is that many times I feel the singing may be extraordinary, but you're witnessing a performer who is almost 95 to 100% involved with the quality of the vocal sound, and sometimes not as involved as I would like them to be in the story, in the acting of it.
Sure.
And I've noticed, like at the Met in recent years, the directors that have been doing new productions have tended to be people that have done more musical theater. And I want to believe the reason for that is that audiences expect a certain amount of connection to material now, I think, than in the past. People still talk about great Caruso recordings and things. I was listening to your podcast and talking about Leontyne Price, and the beautiful, beautiful sounds and voices, which are incredibly important. But I do believe that when somebody is sort of just parked downstage and singing and not really kind of physically involved, or not really completely emotionally involved with everything around them, it becomes, to me, almost like they are sharing an incredible gift with us, but it's not part of the whole. So I have always wanted to see opera where I could, I've wanted to do opera where I can engage the acting part of it as well as the beautiful, vocal sounds and the incredible orchestra and music and all that. I wanted to integrate it more. And I felt like that there's a way to reach opera singers that will open them up a little bit more to be engaged in the full story and less sort of centered on the voice, which of course is very important. But
and I think that's true. And I've been saying this for a number of years now, that clearly musical theater, American musical theater, has influenced opera in a good way, and that is that our singers and our and even going back a step before that, the music schools and the institutions that are teaching our singers are very much more aware of that acting piece, that connection to the text, the connection to the character, as you say, the connection to the storyline. It's very, very important, and becoming more so, right? And so that I love that there's more of that coming over into the opera world, that more realism, more real acting, more real kind of.
Yeah, because it's also the connection between the performers. I mean, sometimes you've seen two singers, and they're basically, having a scene together, but they're kind of, just both singing. And I love, when we did Fledermaus, I love, trying to have those characters really, really respond to each other in a much more natural and spontaneous way. So
absolutely. So speaking of Fledermaus and the rest of the productions, any flow recollections, Finger Lakes Opera recollections that you have that you can share with our audience, because it has been a couple of years, and of course a pandemic intervening, and but it's nice to take a trip down memory lane.
Well, my first production was A Grand Night for Singing, and that was a show that I had done twice before. So it was, for me, it was a show that I adore. I think for a simple little musical review with, simple is really a misnomer. It's six actors or singers that are doing Rodgers and Hammerstein music from their many, many shows. And I think it's really, really well constructed. And while there are a lot of reviews out there, this one somehow I feel is really well constructed and weaves through some of the musics, treating some of the numbers in new ways and some of the numbers in traditional ways. But it was just wonderful to work on it again. And the setting was so lovely because we were in that recital hall that had just become available to us. So that was a lovely place to stage that in a very simple manner, which was all about the incredible music that Rodgers and Hammerstein wrote and the beautiful lyrics, and we had a wonderful cast, and most importantly the man who brought me to you, which was Aaron McAllister, who I loved collaborating with, and
I was just
you
going to
know,
say you had a wonderful musical director for those shows, and Aaron.
yes. So the same thing was true with I Love a Piano, which is an Irving Berlin musical review, and that we did in a much bigger theater and had more physical space to work with, and the production was more choreographed than A Grand Night for Singing. So that was different in that regard, but also Irving Berlin's music is just, to be cherished. It's
Right.
absolutely wonderful. So I love that you were choosing material to augment your opera season with just great writers that would also explore that part of the American songbook. And so Aaron and I collaborated on that as well. And then, of course, came to do Die Fledermaus, which I had not done. And so I loved doing the research about Strauss and the period, and collaborating with wonderful designers. Jeff, the scenic designer.
Terrifically grand production. It was,
Yeah, it was a really wonderful collaboration in terms of the design elements, and then the cast was tremendous. So I just remember loving coming to rehearsal every day, because it was so great to just be immersed in that music and putting it all together.
Great, I would say great family feeling in the.
Yeah, that's what I love about Flow, and that comes from you, because you're that kind of person. So it all trickles down.
We try. So the other thing that I think is very fascinating about your career, you've had a very long and storied association with one of my most beloved musicals, and I'm sure many in our audience most beloved musical, Fiddler on the Roof. You've staged many productions. You are sought after to recreate, I guess, the original Jerome Robbins direction and choreography. I wonder if you could tell our audience about some of your experiences with that show, because I know there are many, and they're pretty incredible.
Yeah, well, it's just an odd thing when a musical becomes such a big part of your life in a way that you never could have possibly envisioned. And it all started with my first Broadway show. I mentioned that I had seen hundreds of Broadway shows. The first Broadway show I ever saw was Fiddler on the Roof, and so that in itself just sort of says that the association with it for so many years, having it been my first experience on Broadway, was pretty amazing. I will say that I've had the opportunity to perform many different roles in Fiddler on the Roof when I was performing. I did the show on Broadway with Topol in a revival. I did a national tour with Theodore Bickel, the original Captain Von Trapp in The Sound of Music. I did a production that was touring through Germany and Austria that was performed in German. So I learned German phonetically for that one. I did the show regionally. And as I said, I played many different roles. So I had this kind of really wonderful immersion in this show. And I learned the show from Jerry Robbins's assistant. So it was, I did get to meet Jerry Robbins, but I didn't learn the show from him, because at that point he was sort of done, and he had his heirs to the show teaching it. But I learned it from the person who was there in the original room. So that was exciting. And when I started directing, needless to say, because I had so much experience with that particular show, I was able to get quite a few positions directing and or choreographing the show. So I had played many roles. I'd seen the show as a child, and then I started to direct it. I started to choreograph it. I started to direct and choreograph it. So I had a whole new life with this show. And then lo and behold, it was the 50th anniversary coming up, and I was asked to basically direct the gala, the one-night gala in celebration of the show, which was also going to be celebrating Sheldon Harnick's 90th birthday. The other creators had all passed. So so I put together, well, I started to put together a show, and it ended up having a cast of 90, which was real. And it was the kind of thing that where people wanted to be part of this, because it is that kind of show where everybody feels it's part of them. They feel like they own it in some way. So the 50th anniversary celebration was a huge labor of love. It was very, very challenging. We were flying Topol in from Israel, flying people in from the West Coast. I was able to assemble 3 sets of the daughters, the 3 daughters from the film, 2 of the 3 daughters from the original Broadway production, and then 3 daughters from a revival. So I had 9 ladies singing Matchmaker, wonderful things like that.
Do I get this right? You had different members of different casts coming in to do the roles, right?
Yeah, we didn't do the show because nobody there needed to see Fiddler on the Roof, but we celebrated through speakers, through some numbers were done, but we tried to do them in new and inventive ways. And in fact, there was a beloved actor named Fiva Schfinkel who was on a TV series called Picket Fences, and he had a long Broadway career. He and Mike Burston, who had done a Tevye for me years before, they did To Life in Yiddish. So we had all sorts of interesting things, and it was a lovely night. Cheetah Rivera gave a special award and citation to Sheldon Harnick, and then Sheldon actually sang "Do You Love Me" with Andrea Martin. It was a wonderful evening. We had a special message from Hal Prince, who was out of the country. And then at the end, the most amazing thing is we created, I basically got 37 of the original Broadway run of Fiddler, 37 of the members to come to this event. And we put them on stage in the finale. And as each one of them, we sort of did a roll call. We were singing Sunrise, Sunset, and then we did a roll call. And as each person came onto the stage, a photo of them from their time in Fiddler was shown. So you would see them 50 years before. And then we had the sea of people on stage, including a children's choir. And it was emotional, to say the least. So just when I thought nothing could top that, I got a call about the film Fiddler, A Miracle of Miracles, which is a documentary that is currently streaming on PBS and was in theaters last year. And I was interviewed twice for that film and was put on camera for 90 minutes talking about Jerry and the choreography in Fiddler. Now, mind you, they had so many people speaking that they said they could have easily put together a 5-hour movie, but who would want to see that? So they only used a small portion of what we filmed, but I was so thrilled to be included in that family and to be part of that film for forever. So so Fiddler is the gift that keeps on giving, and what better show to have close to your heart than,
I think so.
than such a classic.
I think so. And what a great gift you have to be, to have a show that your career is not just tied to, but just it keeps coming back, and it's such a wonderful
And
thing.
the people ask me, do you ever get tired of it? And I say, well, do you get tired of Tosca? It's you don't, because when it's that good, you always find something new. And I do, at this point, the people that taught me the show are quite elderly now. So I feel like part of my mission as a theater person is to share the legacy that is Fiddler. And I feel like since I knew all the creators and had such a long and storied career working on the show, that part of the gift is to bring it to the next generation. So I do that happily.
Wonderful. Well, so are there any upcoming or ventures that are coming up? I know it's hard to plan still, and we're in the midst of all that, and
yeah,
we are planning our summer season. We're going to be performing outside with a Barber of Seville, and we're very excited about it. So what's next for Gary John?
Well, I will say that I had work lined up for an entire year when the pandemic hit. So I had 7 contracts that were like instantly canceled, which was really devastating because one of them was a production of Candide, which has always been a dream show for me and wanting to do. So that was postponed for the second time last month because it was supposed to happen in July, and they're not ready to reopen. And what some of your audiences may not realize is it's not just a question of opening. There are union regulations as well as government regulations that you're dealing with, and so reopening is quite challenging and complicated. But long story short, there are several things that I'm hoping will happen that were supposed to happen in the fall. One is a production of, you talk about Candide, which is this mega enormous
crazy show. It's an absolutely crazy show.
Yeah, with a Leonard Bernstein score that I think is one of the greats of all time. However, the one of the shows that I may be doing that was canceled, that may be rescheduled in September, is a production of I Do, I Do, which is actually the complete opposite because this is a 2-character musical. So a lot easier to do in times of a pandemic where cast of 2, which are husband and wife actually, are it makes that aspect of things quite easy. So I'm hoping to do that, and I'm continuing my coaching work. I have a play that I'm very excited about that I'm collaborating with Susan Tepper. Susan Tepper is a Pulitzer Prize nominee for her fiction and her poetry, and she has written a play about Jackson Pollock, the artist, and she asked me to direct it, and we are in the process of looking. It's also very small cast, just 3, and we're in the process of looking for a very big celebrity name, a high quality actor that has a lot of
star power,
name value to help get this produced.
Sure.
It's an amazing play. It's a 1-act play, runs about 90 minutes, and it's about Pollock at the height of his career having an affair with a young woman, and really struggling with his success and his marriage and his artwork. So it's a really exciting project to be a part of, and we work every week on it, and have an offer out right now. So that's an ongoing project. I also am working on, very slowly, but working on a book, which I have contemplated doing for a long time, but actually started to do it. And it's basically about my stories of my, just like I was telling you about the Fiddler stories. There's so many stories that I have, and the book title is Confessions of a Chorus Boy, and it's sort of a tongue-in-cheek look at a stage-struck child who managed to work in so many different aspects of theater and live performance. And so just kind of putting together all those stories, great stories of working with celebrities and stars, and everything from what it was like to be in South Africa during apartheid to the Fiddler stories. And so there's a lot of I think interesting material, and I think it would be the kind of book that people that love theater and love live performance would enjoy. So slowly working on that as well.
Well, Gary John, thank you for sharing some of those stories with us. We look forward to that book for sure, and best of luck with as we all come out of this kind of fog. I wish you the best, and our audiences certainly wish you the best of luck going forward. Got a lot of interesting projects and exciting projects going, and thanks for taking some time out of the day to spend with us and with our audience and talking with us. It's been
It's my pleasure, Jerry, and my love to you and the family and the company, and I hope that that you get to do some work this summer and that it's successful.
We're going to try. We're going to do it. Thank Thank you so much.
All right, my pleasure. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.